Jurassic Park 3 is directed by Joe Johnston, who was actually offered to direct The Lost World, before Steven Spielberg decided to direct it for himself. And as a result, Jurassic Park 3 is widely considered to still be the low point of the franchise. I know the film has its fans, but rather than an epic 2-hour dinosaur adventure, we have a very quick 90-minute horror thriller, with people just running away from dinosaurs. The movie notoriously went through a troubled pre-production with numerous different scripts written. In fact, the script that was supposed to be used was thrown out 5 weeks before principal photography began, which should be a big red flag as to why this film is a mess. So much so, Michael Crichton never saw the film. The movie was originally meant to be much bigger and intricate, with more time spent in the Pteranodon aviary, and a plot involving Alan Grant investigating a series of mysterious dinosaur killings on the mainland, which to me sounds far more interesting than the movie we got, which ended up just being a simple rescue film. This film isn't based on any of the Michael Crichton books, although there are scenes in the movie that are from the first 2 novels, but weren't used in the Spielberg films, such as the boat sequence. Jurassic Park 3's issues really come down to the plotting and structure of the screenplay, which you can tell when watching it was kind of stitched together in the edits. The movie starts with Eric Kirby, the kid of this film, parasailing next to Isla Sorna, which the movie reminds us is a restricted area, and I'm sure the characters would have noticed. And in classic Jurassic Park fashion, things go wrong, where the boat that Eric is attached to suddenly becomes wrecked, and he is forced to drift over to the island. This scene has become somewhat notorious for not only being unclear on what actually happens to this boat, as you assume it could be the flying pteranodons that destroyed the boat, but going by the movie's logic, the pteranodons are still back in the aviary. This is one of many inconsistencies that this movie has and fans have theorized about, trying to make sense of it. In the mind of a filmmaker, however, this just comes across as an inconsistent plot point that had far more effort put into it in a previous script. However, part of this plot point still made it into the finished film, but due to a lot of changes and reshuffling, we never actually got an answer or payoff to what happened with the boat. The reintroduction to Alan Grant is something that has annoyed fans from the moment this movie was released, as after all the time spent developing him and Ellie Sattler in the first movie as a couple, we find out they've split up, and Ellie is now married and has her own family. Many people, including myself, are still sore about that choice, even though that was what Joe Johnston wanted. We also find out that as long as you offer Alan Grant a lot of money, he will go pretty much anywhere you want, as just like the first movie, money is what gets him over to the island. Again, the sequels are just plagued by a lot of bad decisions about trying to get people to the islands. While the movie definitely has the Sam Neill factor going for it, I'm always happy to see him pop up in any movie, and his performance as expected is great. The screenplay never really gives the Alan Grant character his due. Despite all the callbacks the movie has to the first 2 films, Sam really is doing his best with the very little that he's given. And then we have the Kirbys, who are the whole reason that Alan Grant and his assistant Billy make it over to the island, and are the whole basis for the movie. And look, it's very clear that these characters are written very differently in previous drafts, as evidenced by certain lines of dialogue in the film, where in their introduction it appears Billy and Paul Kirby already know each other, but we've had no evidence at all of them being familiar with each other. So as a result, the versions we get in this movie are again inconsistent and spread pretty thin, just being random parents that simply lie and con Alan Grant, and basically kidnap him to a dinosaur-infested island to find their son. As others have mentioned, the Kirbys really should have been the villains of this movie, as Grant forgives them far too quickly for lying to him. This movie strangely wants you to empathize with them, when you know that you shouldn't, considering everything about them in this movie has been shady, but hey, they still wanted to add a family in peril to a Jurassic Park movie, while throwing in an undercooked divorce plotline to mix things up. While I do enjoy William H. Macy and Tia Leone as actors, there's nothing they really add to the Kirbys that make them memorable in any way, especially Tia, who unfortunately is just made to be a screaming mess most of the movie, which is a disappointing step down from how Laura Dern and Julianne Moore's characters were portrayed in previous movies. Most of these character issues again just come down to the writing and directing, as the actors are just working with whatever they're given. Trevor Morgan, who plays Eric, is fine. I know a lot of people, including myself, still don't believe to this day that he survived 8 weeks on that dinosaur island. When you consider how quickly the mercenaries got eaten by the Spinosaurus, Eric exists merely as a plot device in this movie, to get the characters onto the island, and act as Deus Ex Machina to save Grant later on from the raptors. Grant's assistant Billy is an enigma in this movie, as he has the most evidence of screenplay rewrites, but the movie seems to have a pretty specific arc for the character in portraying Alan Grant by stealing the raptor eggs and setting him up for what should have been his death. Fans of course have theories that maybe Billy was secretly working for InGen, but it's clear things were just changing so rapidly throughout the creative process. I still think Billy should have died as an act of redemption during the Pteranodon sequence, but supposedly the actor who plays Billy got really upset about his character dying, and Joe Johnston felt obligated to change it. A movie director should never do. Collaborate with your actors, yes, but don't give in to them having a hissy fit. Even the dinosaurs here feel underserved. The Spinosaurus was purposely set up to be the big bad of this film, as a move to replace the T-Rex as the face of the franchise, a move the newer movies have since rejected. But the Spinosaurus doesn't really do anything. It exists to kind of randomly stalk our characters, and there's no real attempt to explain why it's chasing them. It just ends up being another dinosaur to run from, rather than be the movie's real antagonist. We learned that it wasn't on InGen's list of dinosaurs that they were creating, but the movie never attempts to dive more into that detail and explore why it was created. Instead, the Spinosaurus just comes across as a movie monster that the movie producers just want you to accept. It's a major step down from the original Jurassic Park film, which treated dinosaurs as real animals. And of course we had the Spinosaurus vs T-Rex fight, which was heavily advertised when the movie was coming out, and to this day still winds up being not just a disappointing fight, but an insult to people that love the T-Rex over the previous films, where the icon of the franchise is killed in just 30 seconds. We get it, you want to make the Spinosaurus seem like a bigger threat, but at least make the fight longer and more memorable, especially if the fight is what you're selling people. Of course, Dan Winston and his crew return to create the animatronic dinosaurs, which still look good as usual, although the way that the Spinosaurus is shot makes it feel more mechanical than natural, particularly with the eyes, which stay one shade and don't change like the T-Rex's eyes. There are some attempts to acknowledge that the raptors had feathers with the little Roadrunner-like bits on its head that are appreciated, but of course we know today that the whole raptor would have been covered in feathers. There is a significant amount of more CG dinosaurs in this film, with many close-ups of CG dinosaur faces, which still look off compared to the animatronic faces and have absolutely dated by today's CG standards. I'm sure they were out of time and animatronic models hadn't been planned out due to rewrites, but it would have gone a long way in having a lifelike brachiosaur face up close rather than the digital one that we get in the movie. The subplot with the raptor egg still feels completely unnecessary. I mean, yeah, it's great seeing the raptors again, they're a staple of the series, but much like The Lost World, they're not really needed. You could take that whole storyline out of the film and the movie would still exist as it is. The drama around it is underdeveloped, with Billy very quickly mentioning that he wanted to sell the eggs for money. But come on, that's all you're gonna do with the raptors? Why even have them? As I've mentioned, the movie is undoubtedly a mess, and you could go on for ages explaining what's wrong with this movie. Can it be enjoyed as a very straightforward Jurassic Park thriller? Yes, but that just doesn't make it feel like the next chapter in this saga, rather more like a very simple spin-off. Although it is nice to see how these movies could be made if they went the straight thriller route. But I think as we've seen with the Jurassic World movies now, and the reactions fans have had to that, we want something a little more meaty with our Jurassic Park movies, that can offer wonder and the magic that we experienced in the first movie, and challenge you with bigger existential questions, while making you feel like you're going on an epic adventure. I actually quite enjoy Don Davis's score for the movie, who adds a lot of new interesting themes for the Spinosaurus and raptors, while mixing in a lot of the classic John Williams score that we all know and love. As I said, Jurassic Park 3 has its fans, and this review isn't to dissuade you from liking the movie if you do like it. All film is subjective after all. I in fact still have merch from this movie when it was coming out, but if I'm being honest, Jurassic Park 3 is the Jurassic film that I'm least inclined to rewatch over and over. Yes, the Sam Neill factor is what keeps me interested, but if I want to watch Sam Neill as Alan Grant, I'm just going to watch that first amazing Jurassic Park film. Jurassic Park 3 remains a disappointment and the low point of the franchise. Jurassic Park 3 gets a 5 out of 10 for me. Guys, with Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom out now in theaters in some parts of the world and out soon on June 22nd, I'll be going through and reviewing the Jurassic Park franchise. So guys, if you want to see more reviews just like this one, stay right here for your What It Fix. Bye guys.